Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a special October request from regular podmate Tony Salvaggio. We're discussing the 1986 independently made American revenge action fantasy film, The Wraith. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, editor of this summer's Castle of Horror anthology and the upcoming Young Captain Nemo Quest for the Nautilus. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Denver, standing in for Drew Edwards, who has lost his voice at the last minute. Drew, I hope you're well. Katarina Henderson is a young writer in Denver. Say hello, Katarina.
Hello.
Hello, Vielkommen. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. Okay, The Wraith. Katarina is actually the only person who's probably never heard that joke, and that's because she's never heard of Burns and Allen, I'm certain.
In full disclosure, Katarina is our beloved child.
Yes.
Just FYI.
She is a freshman in high school, ready to learn about the gender politics of the 80s. So The Wraith...
or teach us about them.
Modern teenagers.
Yeah, I will gladly accept either.
Yeah. The Wraith is a 1986 independently made American revenge action fantasy film. That's a lot of things. This movie is a lot of things. Written and directed by Mike Marvin and starring Charlie Sheen, Sherilyn Fenn of Twin Peaks, Nick Cassavetes, all of 6'6", and Randy Quaid, who is 6'5", at just about the time that he was playing Lennie in Of Mice and Men. The Wraith tells the story of an Arizona teen who mysteriously returns from the dead as a supernatural street racer driving an invulnerable Dodge supercar. His intent is to take revenge on the gang who murdered him. That description is a spoiler of the entire mystery of this movie. So let's get our opening thoughts. We'll go Tony, Julia, Katarina, and then we'll just go right into it. Tony, opening thoughts. The 1986, The Wraith.
So I think I had seen this maybe a few years ago, but before that I hadn't seen it. Maybe when I was in college, and definitely once when I was in high school. And I am going to add a sorry, not sorry to the female members of the podcast. So, because for better or worse, this is one of the most doodliest 80s movies. I had forgotten exactly how testosterone as fuel, as racing, how much that played a part in this movie. I don't know how I forgot that, because it's pretty obvious. But there's a lot to unpack about this very extremely particular time in the 80s, and showing off cool cars. And I feel really bad for the female lead, because her character, Carrie, she seems to have played off this trauma pretty well.
Yeah.
And weirdly, everything they discuss should have been way more traumatic, and in a different movie we could have dealt with a lot of things. But in this, she's there to kind of fight over and to be dreamy with Charlie Sheen, who plays basically a cipher character who's there to race. But yeah, I still enjoy a lot of aspects of this movie, but whoa, is it full of everything a hot-blooded American male would want in a movie at this time period.
Thank you very
better
much.
Or worse.
Yeah. Okay, Julia. I mean, The Wraith, like what? Explain this movie to us. What are your opening thoughts?
Well, first, my opening thought is, Tony, I love you, but you definitely owe me one for this.
Yeah, I know. As I was watching, I was telling Jason, rain checked out really early on. And that's at the point where I started like really paying attention to exactly, and as it unfolded, I was like, oh crap. Is this my moment to apologize to apologize especially to Julia, right, in particular, and now by proxy, Katarina.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I hear you.
I do forgive you, but I will be calling in a favor at some point. Maybe not today, but soon. What is it?
I I get it. You're
You
not
know,
wrong.
I think it's terrible, but I can't possibly. You know what? It's not my turn. All right,
Yeah.
go ahead, Joya.
So, but so just as far as the Wraith goes, so yes, Charlie Sheen is some kind of reincarnation ghost something version of a young man who was brutally killed while having sex with his girlfriend. And he has come back to claim the girlfriend and get revenge on the people who killed him. So it's quite a picture. I'm excited to tear it apart. I mean, talk about it. But yes, let's hear what my beloved Katerina has to say about it.
Yeah, Katerina, I'm sorry. Educate us on this film, please.
It's okay. So I was obviously not around as a teenager in the 80s, but I have seen like other movies which are not horror movies from this era, and like this did not play like a horror movie to me for some reason because it just felt so absurd. Everything about it. Like, yes, it's very misogynist and stuff, but it was just, there are so many things that you can make fun of about this movie. So, like, I don't know, the whole punk culture that's going on with the main villain gang and just, yeah.
How did you describe the hair?
Oh, yeah. The one guy who's like, he's part of the main Guy Packard's gang. He has both a mullet and a mohawk.
Right.
Because, you can't get more teenage punk than that, apparently.
And makeup. Lots of punk makeup, which
Oh my God.
Pretty sure he has a tiny sword through his ear.
Oh yeah. By the way, if you're older, you could also play if you're older and you really want to get your weekend going quickly, you could drink every time that Randy Quaid's Sheriff Loomis throws out a euphemism for doing drugs. He has a million of them in his back pocket, and he constantly, it's like rapid fire. You want to find some nose candy hard, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I don't even remember all of them because there are so many.
It's really, really like he's making the stuff up as he goes. That's why
it probably was but it's his accusation of everyone. The youth are all on drugs, and they're on about 1,000 different euphemisms for them.
That's
that was another thing that was just so like every time I would like look at the screen and they were supposed to be doing drugs, it looked so ridiculous. They have this one very specific face that the two guys make whenever they're supposed to be doing drugs, and it's just it fully is like, it takes away from whatever action is about to unfold or whatever just happened.
Because of the caricaturesque nature.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why I kind of feel like the movie is almost made for. It's not even really made for real teenagers at this time, or if it is, it's made for like mall teenagers who maybe don't even do a lot of drugs, because these kids are such aliens to the audience. I mean, like these punks in here, these are like generic, like punks with a capital P that you saw in any action movie. Like Charles Bronson was killing people like this left and right in the Death Wish movies.
Right.
These sort of tweakers who are constantly like sort of snorting and giggling, and their heads are bobbing around their shoulders like they're bobblehead dolls. And there's a sort of a weird like concept of what a drugged out teenager was like that I believe was intended to appeal like to middle-aged people watching the movie more than anything else. I that's my only explanation for it, because
like a kind of kids these days sort of
kids these
commentary
days.
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely Sheriff Loomis is the stand-in for any adult who was watching this movie who wanted to talk about kids these days.
Yes.
And at the time, Sheriff Loomis would have been, I guess my parents were decently cool. I didn't do drugs. I still don't do drugs. But like seeing none of it was believable then either.
Right.
Like no one, even if you knew punks, they weren't these punks. This is definitely the tropiest of punks from Arizona, which actually does sort of make sense because Arizona a few other places. I guess they hadn't reached peak meth
Right.
yet.
That's a good point.
But
Yeah.
if you were gonna find tweakers and you search them out, definitely parts of Arizona. No offense to my friends from. Well, actually, they would corroborate this, so it's not a dirty secret. It's just there are places, and it's reached further in the South. But oh man,
Right. And the
yeah.
movie takes place in a quiet little desert town. And it's true that drugs are a problem. I mean, problem everywhere. But it's true that drugs are a particular problem in quiet little towns when sometimes there's not a lot to do. So this is a gang of general purpose criminals, but they're great. They're great. They do a couple of things. They do a lot of drugs, except for their boss, Nick Cassavetes, who is of indeterminate age. Like everybody here is young, but nobody's in high school. Like nobody is in high.
Right.
Everybody's like out of high school, and I guess just knocking around Tucson and working at the burger stand and doing what you do when you're just a kid.
It's like if you would just expect a few towns over, the entire cast from Last Starfighter
Yes.
would have played, like the cast from Last Starfighter would have played a football game against the cast
Oh, for real.
from
Of the
the
Wraith.
school from
Yes.
this. Yeah. Like they're in that same. We're kind of in between, but we're kind of not going to go into that. But mainly because we don't want to have to worry about them being in school and having to film any of that.
And I think the reason they're not in school is that we want this small town feel. It is kind of beautiful when you look at it. This thing was shot on location in Tucson, Arizona. The big set that they built is the burger stand, but the burger stand looks real. All of this looks totally real. It could be summer vacation. It could be that they're all out of high school. It's impossible to tell, and the movie's not going to waste any time talking about what. That's some basic information that probably would be it would give some extra rounding to these characters to find out, like, where are they in their lives? But it doesn't even matter. They've got no parents. The only real adult in the whole movie, is this sheriff.
Guy.
Yeah, the sheriff, Randy Quaid, and his the sheriff's department people and the EMS who come. But generally, it is a drama that plays out entirely between people who are racing one another, and and most of the time, it's the gang of racers against a ghost. But yes,
what's weird to me is I've watched a lot of 50s movies that are basically this, right?
Yeah.
And then you have too. I mean, we trade them. Hey, have you seen this? Have you seen that? And we covered Giant Gila Monster, which is sort of that. But in general, there's very few adults in any of the hot rod movies.
That's right.
From the 50s.
Yeah.
And so this tracks along with that. I was surprised. And I hope that maybe some helpful soul who listens to the podcast will say, oh yeah, you need to find this movie. I was surprised that I don't remember having ever seen a hot rod movie from that era where this happens. And it seems like there should be. A guy gets run off the road. Maybe it's by greasers. Maybe it's by Letterman jacket, thugs who would have, if the greasers were the counterculture, then they would have been run off the road by the, preps or whatever you want to call them, and then returns to get revenge. I haven't seen
such
that
a great idea.
And I'm surprised. It seems like I should have seen that movie. Maybe we just got shifted into a timeline where another Tony remembers seeing, Ghost of, Hot Rod Ghost or whatever.
Yes.
But I don't remember that. And it seems that's a shame because I would totally watch a black and white hot rod movie of this, which would
Tony,
probably...
It's funny that you bring that up, because I agree with you. Watching this movie, watching The Wraith, other than the fact that there is some toplessness, the people are having sex, but they're wearing underwear. So we have some topless nudity, and you have
ugly underwear.
Oh yes. That's I'm glad you brought that up, Julia, because I mean, no, man, no.
Yeah. No, they're wearing some Target style tidy black underwear.
No. The one guy that gets killed is wearing tidy tannies.
Oh, that's right.
Well, those
I
really
think
thin or something. I don't.
Yeah. I don't know.
Julia,
I don't know
I'm
why
so
you would wear
happy
such a garment.
But
I mean, that would be another reason that they
this.
keep the age so ambiguous, is because God forbid we spread those kinds of morals to the teenagers.
But there are plenty of movies where they're definitely spreading those morals.
In the 80s, teenagers had sex all the time. It's just changed. It's in the movies
Yep.
anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, I was just surprised. I it seems like there should be, and to be honest,
The
nothing.
graphic violence.
I think even the gender politics would have probably be around the same from the
Yeah,
50s
everything
to
else.
this
This could
particular
be in the
movie.
50s. There would be not. The only difference is in those hot rod movies that we did see that tend to have aliens or monsters or whatever. There's usually this Sam Loomis character, and he has a tenuous peace with the leader of the gang, like the sheriff
Right.
who kind of has the ability to talk across lines with Steve McQueen in The Blob, or with
Well,
the guy in Gila Monster.
well, the
Um,
only difference here is that the gang is most of the people. So you only
yeah,
have two characters who aren't in the gang,
it's a
and
super good point. Jeez.
you know,
Yeah, there's the
Loomis
kid
is
who works in the burger joint,
yeah.
and there's Sherilyn Fenn who works in the burger joint and is dating Nick Cassavetes, and then there's Randy Quaid. You're right.
Not
Not
even
There are no
dating.
no,
extra
she
people.
is not
In a
dating Nick Cassavetes. He has possessed her and
All
is
right, so take
controlling
us into
her.
the
which
beginning
is
of this
gross.
She is
movie.
not a
Terrible.
voluntary. That's not a consensual
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, we open really quickly with just setting the tone that everybody's life is oriented around drag racing, and particularly there is a gang of thieves who tend to race people and cheat and take their cars, and that's their
Okay, but
thing.
you
Nick
got to back up. If you're gonna say we open with 4 random lights coming from the sky and
Yes,
joining in the road and creating the most incredibly gorgeous Dodge automobile,
it's a turbo. It's
called a
a
Dodge M4S.
yes.
And it is a beautiful, beautiful car. So these 4 lights come together, it's very much Wonder Twin style, where it's like form of an awesome Dodge, shape of Charlie Sheen. And so
Yeah.
then they like come into town. Now you can talk about the gang, but that's
Okay,
very
But
important.
you're right.
that sequence, the cinematography, the way the effects are, every bit of it
Oh my
is probably one of, if you wanted to say, so what was 80s? You show that, like what it was 80s cinema, what it was 80s special effects, and there's better special effects. But
And
if you
yeah,
want the pastiche of
Yeah.
80s, if you're gonna okay, and I'm gonna go off on a side thing here. If you are a person who is making, let's say, a Kung Fury,
Yeah.
or any other 80s thing, let's say this is the 80s, this is right in the 80s, just watch something like this, because when you see kind of a more independently funded movie, you're going to get characters and people who are wearing pretty much what they were wearing in the 80s.
Yes.
You're going to get special effects which have that lower budget look that a lot of like a Kung Fury kind of thing is going to try to emulate.
Yes.
Just watch it, just do that. That it drives me nuts again when you see somebody who's like the 80s, and it's just they'll throw in a few lines about, oh, what about this metal band or whatever.
Yeah.
And none of it has the flavor of something like this.
It's
Again, for
hard
better or
to
worse.
spend a
But
lot
if
of
you're
money.
gonna do it and
Yeah.
claim that you're gonna do it, just look at something like this. It's really not that hard of an equation. But
yeah.
man, that opening
Katerina
sequence. woo.
wants to say something.
I mean, I
About
haven't
Sure.
really like gotten into all of this 80s nostalgia culture that's like
Mhm.
definitely
Taken
coming
over.
back because of, Stranger Things, It, and stuff like that. But
Right.
that like motorcycle outfit, I don't even know how to describe it, that the driver wears before any of them like know who he really is.
Sure, it's
Yeah.
his racing outfit. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
understand if that's meant to be scary or what. I mean, like the Wraith outfit.
Yeah.
Well, especially with
It-
the breathing, the Darth Vader breathing.
So as
This
a
is
as a
funny.
person who watched this as a teenager, none of that I think is supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be cool and cyber. Like,
Yes. Right.
Cyborg cool. If he's driving the coolest car, he's got to have the coolest outfit.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have that
And
opening
nothing-
silhouette where they show
Yeah.
him top of the hill with like the car, and you can just see
Yeah.
the shape of the costume with
Yep.
like these weird, awkward shoulder and head spikes that aren't as
Yeah.
obvious like when you actually see him. But I just remember looking at that silhouette and being like, why is that so pointy?
Right. And he's
Definitely
got
a danger if your car is not supernatural. It is a danger to your upholstery for sure. Your upholstery will not survive that suit. very well.
We need to do a
That's
lot
very
of
true.
car movies. I know we're trying to get back to opening up this actual story, but I just want to mention this is such a sick car. Oh my God, it's so great looking. And it reminds me a lot of how they made the car. This movie is like, this is 86. So this is like, 9 or 10 years after the movie The Car, which featured basically a big Lincoln. But they'd done a little bit of customizing on the Lincoln to like get rid of things like handles and seams and stuff. But other than that, it's just a Lincoln. But it's sometimes if you take a sweet enough car, you could just make it the star of your movie, and it's great. This movie, this
But
this
this one,
car
for
is
some
amazing.
reason, this movie decided that the car wasn't enough, and they also have to have a motorcycle, which I don't really get why there has to be
Well,
both a
yeah.
motorcycle and a car.
So let's get into the character, the
I guess the
relationships.
idea that the reason there's two is so that because we're not supposed to necessarily know that Charlie Sheen is also the alien from the car, because that actually is a big surprise when you go, wait a minute, that he's the alien, or he's the whatever, the Wraith.
Yeah, it's
That is
unknown to
actually
us.
a surprise. So I guess that's why he has to have two vehicles, so he can ride in as Charlie Sheen on a motorcycle and also be the cool Darth
Yeah.
Vader guy.
So explain to us, Julia. You don't have to walk us scene by scene, but explain to us who is Sherilyn Fenn, Carrie, and why is it significant when beautiful Charlie Sheen wanders into her life?
So, like I said, Sherilyn Fenn is possessed. Is like the possession of this main bad dude.
Nick
What's his name?
Cassavetes. Nick
No, but
Cassavetes.
what's the character's name? Katarina
Packard.
knows.
Packard,
Packard.
like
Yeah.
the car. Yeah.
Yeah. So Packard, he when she meets Charlie Sheen, Packard shows up and says, "Get in the car." Charlie Sheen says, "Is that your boyfriend?" She goes, "Oh God, no," or whatever. And then I thought maybe he was her brother or something. I don't know. But then she gets in, but he's clearly just decided that, and he actually says, "If I can't have you, nobody can." So
Yeah.
clearly he's basically willing to hurt or kill anyone who tries to be with her, and might possibly hurt or kill her if she tries to be with somebody else. What were you gonna say, Katarina?
It's also very important, like, that in that same scene where he says that if I can't have you, nobody can line, she's like, you think that I'm your possession and that you own me and all that, and he's like, yeah, that's because I do. So
Right.
he just outright says that he thinks of her as his possession.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's very much a typical abusive relationship where people are all afraid to take him on. He's more than a bully. He's willing to kill people. And like we've seen that he actually, like, his people, although he wasn't actually the one who killed her boyfriend, but he was the head of the gang who killed her boyfriend.
Yeah.
So she's with him out of fear, and everyone else is kind of permitting it out of fear. And the one guy who's willing to try to take him on is the brother of the boyfriend who died. And nobody else, like he says, how come you guys let him take her at one point? Because everyone else is afraid of him. And so it's just, he's the bully with capital B. And she's just kind of helpless, and it's not her fault. I mean, she's not a weak character. It's just that you can't see how to get out of the situation. It's very
What's really crazy, again, I'm going to talk this up to movies you see differently as an adult for 1,000,
Hmm.
Alex.
Yeah.
You would think that at the beginning that would have been a totally different person, like both people in the couple, and the couple just got killed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They actually explain later that she woke up from some trauma with just a blanket on the middle of nowhere.
Hmm.
And all this time after that, he basically came back, made her his possession, is in this terribly abusive relationship.
Yes.
And her dealing with the trauma. I mean, everybody deals with trauma differently, but it's such a weird, we don't deal with that at all in the movie because
No.
we're supposed to be too busy racing cars and getting revenge.
Yeah.
But as an adult, all of that is just really troubling and
Dark. Yeah.
troublesome because most people wouldn't. It's bad enough to watch your boyfriend, in her case, get killed in front of her.
On top
Then
of her.
and then they knock her out, throw her out in the middle of the desert. And then later she has, other than when Packard comes around, has a fairly normal life as far as we know. As far as,
Yeah.
again, we don't spend much time with her, but she's working at the drive-in, at the very male gazy drive-in,
Right.
where we have lots of male
Listen,
gazy shots.
that's there's
And
not much
then,
different there from a
oh,
million
that's 80s.
places.
I mean, again, that's that was also, hey, how do we get the guys who want to see fast cars racing into the theaters?
Yes.
That's how you do it, right there.
Sure.
Well, I love
all
that.
of
I
the
love that
burger
when
shots.
Packard's gonna possibly kill her because she's decided she actually is gonna stand up to him while they're out in the middle of nowhere. The other car shows up and he's like, okay, I'll come back to this, but first I gotta go drag race because duty calls. And it's
That
like
is
so
right.
funny that drag racing is the number one priority for these guys. Like the number one priority is getting more cars, which they do by cheating drag races and racing for pinks. I love that when he this movie to me is just like a weird cross between like some new age, some kind of science fiction-y Close Encounters type of movie and Grease 2. And
Yes.
so like, when
it's
he's
not
like,
read as a horror movie to me in the slightest. So
it's not a horror movie at all. Yeah,
no,
it's not really a horror movie. I mean, we often have that
not.
conversation. We often start with these podcast things with, well, is this even a horror movie? Like, why are we? But anyway,
it has a couple of scary shots of the corpses with the eyes that
that's
are
true.
not there.
Those
We
are
don't.
horrific.
Well, just so you know, we basically cover anything genre, and
Yeah.
we'll
I know.
even stretch the definition of genre. But
Right.
the idea is,
I mean,
if it could have been written about in Twilight Zone magazine, we will cover it on this.
But I
show.
love that the guys, when they first corner this couple, it's not any of the leads. He's like, what do you want? And they're like, we want something pink. And the girl looks horrified, like they're talking about her. And I'm like, pink slips, ownership papers. And then he's like, I want your papers. I was like, yes, I called it.
Yeah.
But it's so funny. It's like they're not even, they're rapey, but the rape is not their primary goal. It's just stealing this guy's car and then maybe raping afterwards.
Good grief.
But,
oh my
yes.
God. The level of like the just sort of gross shorthand that goes on in this movie. And I love stuff like this because I'm fascinated by watching sort of dead memes, but the sort of gross shorthand of where, we're going to watch your girl and they're not going to, I mean, just the just raw misogyny of it all. You're not going to want her back after the Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's just so like purely old-fashioned exploitative
Right.
in a way that maybe we do still have just as much misogyny in today's movies, but I think generally if we do, we hide it a lot better so that instead of it being right there for everybody to observe, instead you have to wait for a hot take that explains it to us.
I definitely don't think it's just as much because even in these movies which just have a lot of blatant misogyny, you could still explain some of the more subtle things as well if you tried hard enough.
Okay.
I mean, going to like seeing a lot of genre films, because I mean that's a huge chunk of what I watch. I will agree that some of it depends. I would say more independent stuff still has that level, but again, like you say, it's more in the shorthand.
Yeah.
And also, in a lot of that, maybe it tends to be just written better.
Yeah, well, that's possible.
This is
That
an
is totally
extremely
possible.
tropey movie. And like I say, I mean, I remember enjoying it as a teenager, but as an adult, you just look at things differently. As a, Katarina can attest, as a teenager from a totally different time period, the language of cinema is different.
Yeah, now it just feels like a parody of itself.
I mean, yes. Even watching it now, somewhat so, yes.
Well, there's something to that. We make that observation a lot, and yet there's no other way to understand Randy Quaid's character, because this movie is played so straight that to the extent that it's intended to make us laugh, it's just because it's so obviously borrowed. Randy Quaid is playing a cop in the same way that Dennis Franz? No, I can't remember. Anyway, the cop in The Beach, and then in Blood Beach, and also the cop in Halloween. What's the one? Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to cut all of this. But the one where there's a comet that's turning people into zombies, and you have, basically what you had all the time at this period were these brown raincoated detectives who wander around and chomp cigars and smart mouth everybody, and they're like cynical and mean, and it is not even patterned after an actual human that anybody remembers. It's
Well,
patterned after a concept that is like a ninth generation VHS copy of, I guess, like Humphrey Bogart from a movie from the 40s.
Well,
You
I
know, it's just,
agree. I would be surprised, and I haven't done a deep dive on the backstory, but I would say that the director, if in the elevator pitch, if part of it wasn't this is an updated hot rod movie,
yeah,
I would be surprised, because
yes,
most, if not all, of the tropes come from exactly that. Like,
yeah.
if you took huge chunks of the likes of Giant Gila Monster, Drag Strip Alley, etc., like those are all bits that are in this. Just it has an 80s veneer.
Yeah. So in this case, the gang have a chop shop where they are taking cars that they steal. The ones that are valuable, they're keeping. The ones that are not valuable, they're chopping up. They, so the gang members are clearly not high school students. Maybe one or two of them, but they're running a whole shady business. Um, and we get alerted early on that there's lots of chemicals in the air there, so that if an explosion were to happen there, it would cause the whole place to blow sky high. That is the movie winking at us and letting us know that, by gum, if that doesn't happen, we're all going to be
Is it even winking? I think it's just waving its hands in the air, going,
Yeah.
soon,
Oh, I'm sure that's
everyone.
not going to be important anytime soon.
Exactly.
I should point out they have a geek. It's so interesting to me that in the gang is just like in the Ghost of Dragstrip Hollow, they have a tech geek who's your engine guy and your car value guy and your fixing stuff guy, and that is Rughead, played amazingly by Clint Howard.
Whose
Clint,
hair is its own character. That is some
oh,
majesty.
he's got these big, he's so perfect. He's like he's amazing. He's got these big Coke bottle glasses. He's sort of ostentatiously out of shape. His hair is a giant sort of red fro of thick, Brillo pad hair.
It's
And yeah,
He
he's
looks like
amazing.
someone who would be an Escape from New York, and they just somehow time traveled, extradited an Escape from New York extra into this race car movie.
You brought up something really interesting here, because he is like one of the geek characters that the main man would have, in Escape from New York or something. The person who's like, yeah, well, that person has $800 worth of metal in their mouth, so you should hold them for the metal or whatever. Just useful crap like that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and in a way, that's another trope that's being hit here. This gang, with its weird mullet mohawks and they're huffing paint thinner and whatever the hell else they're
Oh,
doing.
WD-40 and drinking what may be a concoction or might actually be hydraulic fluid.
Jesus
Either
Christ.
way, it's stored in hydraulic fluid container, and the skank is also the other thing that I really noticed as an adult that never hit on me when I was younger. Gutter Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this poor guy in the movie has some severe problems.
Yes.
And he's along because, he's Skank's brother, cousin? I can't remember.
I don't know. He's just a follower. It doesn't even matter.
But no one, that guy I felt the most sympathetic for, because he has probably may or may not have always had issues, but he's so trying to fit in, and he's the most tragic, because as you watch it as an adult, there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's sort of kind of played as a joke.
Yeah.
But now I would really want to hope to try to get that guy out of that.
Yeah, I agree with
some
you.
help, some serious, it's extremely disturbing to me.
He's very
everything, and how his mental, the shape of his mentality is just, it feels way more tragic now. And at the time it was like, oh, he and Skank are just the crazy punks or whatever. But watching it with fresh eyes had me really, really sad for Gutter Boy.
This must be the work of Jamie Bosian, the actor. And the reason I say that is, look how lazy they are with the character that that Randy Quaid is playing. So when you think of the fact that Gutter Boy seems to have a whole backstory, he's desperate. He wants to fit in. He's the only one who's really kind of paying attention to how outmatched they are by this seemingly supernatural race car driver. They're in a gang where the race car driver keeps interrupting their plot and saying, "Race me," and
Your men
I
will
guess
die.
their
Yeah.
mode of living is that
Right.
they always drop everything and do that. But now
Yeah.
every time they race this guy, one of them dies. Gutter Boy seems to be the only one who, in
troubled
his
by that.
addled mind, is even aware that none of them are surviving these races. And it's
Well, none of them
Also-
seems to care about the other ones who die. They all kind of take it in stride, like, oh, bummer. Oh well.
Well, no,
Kinda
that's-
when the first
that's
guy,
the rules.
Augie, died.
yeah, Augie.
Literally, the sheriff is walking around and he's like, "Hey, who was the other driver?" And they're like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Wow, you guys don't care that your friend Augie just died." And they're like, and then he goes, "Well, that's kids these days."
Exactly. You really this is all part of you remember we talked about Class of 1984, which is, oh geez, we really got to do Class of 84, but the one where the principal like straight up murders a bunch of his misbehaving students, because they're like rapists and killers. But it's the same thing. It's the notion that you don't have to watch Mad Max. Hey America, hey 40-year-old America watching this movie at home, you don't know it, but your town has already become a post-apocalyptic wasteland. But and the kids, with their crazy hair and their weird cocktail napkin, cocktail sword earrings and stuff, are like, they have brought post-apocalyptic madness to you. And the only way to deal with them is to straight up kill them if you get a chance. I really think that's the message that's going on. You can hear it today. You know what, we don't even have to talk about the president today. You can hear it in the speeches of then one day to be president Donald Trump back in the 80s, dealing with the Central Park attackers. His belief, just sharing that there's marauders out there and they're raping and killing and we need to lock everybody up. This was something you were hearing just everywhere. Anyway, so we've established the
but in
world.
Gutter Boy in particular,
Yeah.
he has ticks where he's very agitated when things are going wrong. Like,
Yeah.
this again is watching that felt, wow, I feel totally different and I feel sympathy in a different way
Yeah.
than perhaps when I saw this in probably 87.
That's
I saw
really
it on cable,
kind.
and I didn't see it on, I didn't see it in the theater.
Yeah.
So it would have been on cable definitely, or on VHS. And I think that I thought that was just interesting in the way that we choose to handle mental illness, and as well as, and I mean, we don't always, like, there's plenty of movies where that's just the thing, like, hey, look, here's one character that has some form of mental illness, but he's a bad guy, so whatever. But in this character, he's kind of a victim of the gang as well, because he works with Skank, and the head of the airplane graveyard, who doesn't care as long as they're doing stuff that helps him. He doesn't care what happens to any of his workers. He just knows that they tag the parts and do all the stuff that you do in an airplane graveyard.
Yeah.
But the way
What
that
a great
he
set that is, by the
acts-
way.
Oh yeah,
Like
that's amazing.
how cool is that these characters work in an airplane graveyard? That's just fantastic.
Yeah, but I just, that struck me as you hope that things have progressed, but we've changed kind of hopefully a lot of our attitudes about that since 86. But
I think
don't know.
the airplane graveyard, the beautiful roads. By the way, a poor guy died making this
Oh
movie.
yeah,
Camera guy, because they flipped a camera car when they were filming one of the chase scenes. But like those shots, the scenes where they're driving down all around those cliffs, which are so dangerous, especially the person in the
Yes.
plane. But it's really beautiful scenery out there in Arizona. I have a wrench to throw in. I'm curious what you guys would have thought of this movie had Johnny Depp played the Charlie Sheen character, because apparently Johnny Depp not only was considered for the part, but was just around all the time because he was living with Sherilyn Fenn and he was just hanging out in her hotel.
No
Which
kidding.
I think is really interesting. Or he was dating her and he was hanging out in her hotel.
I don't, with the amount of dialogue and or character non-development, you might say,
Yeah.
It wouldn't have
I
made any
don't
difference.
think it would have mattered, as long as I think it mattered to people who wanted to see a hunky actor with his shirt unbuttoned, but I don't think it would have mattered if they did the exact same dialogue.
Yeah,
I think that's interchangeable, to be honest.
I think so too. Because they're both pretty boys.
Yeah,
I think he would have been really interesting if he had played the Nick Cassavetes part. And I'm not knocking Nick Cassavetes.
Well, that was one of the things that he was considered. Well, let me see. No, it wasn't. I'm sorry, it wasn't that one. It was either Jake, which is the Wraith character, the Charlie Sheen character,
the original,
or the
Jamie.
other character was let me see.
Jake
here,
is the Charlie Sheen reincarnation.
Jamie's the
one who is
original.
dead.
Yeah. Charlie Sheen's character, but was one, but also Augie was the other one that he was considered for.
That would be a terrible idea. What a waste.
Yeah.
That would be ridiculous.
It would be.
He's good. But I mean, but he
part, like, I barely noticed that he was there until he was like going into his final death battle. So
right.
I do want to
hey,
circle back to one thing that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, we might be on the same train of thought. I'm not sure, but I was going to ask about what you think, and this is actually directed to Katerina more. What do you think is going on? Because it seems to me completely useless. But what do you think is going on with the bodies being intact except for their eyes are missing? Nothing ever happens with that. What is that?
I don't. Okay. That didn't make any sense to me either, because we were talking about that, like, oh, maybe they're gonna go in some sort of zombie direction with this, because but it really didn't. I mean, obviously, like, one explanation is that they just wanted to have the creepy shots of the dead bodies with the eyes missing, and that it also is proof that there's supernatural things going on here. But I'm trying to think if there was, like, an actual consequence for that.
Or explanation.
Let me just let you in on this. No, there is no.
It's exactly, Katerina's right. It's exactly the supernatural element of the movie. The bodies stay intact despite these horrific, just insane, they explode cars. Like, there's car parts flying everywhere, huge explosions. I mean, a huge chunk of the budget must have been exploding these cars.
Oh my gosh! And they do that very well, by the way. I love how they just rain.
Do you think they were
parts.
planning? Do you think they were planning to do something with that whole bodies with the no eyes thing, and then they just ran out of money or time, or had to cut it?
I don't know. They might have just wanted it to look cool.
I think that they
so
were
weird.
The fact that he's taking their eyes, he's taking a thing from them as well as their life, is the Wraith part of it. Otherwise, he's just a crazy car.
Just a vengeance demon, yeah.
Right, but he's a vengeance demon in that he's taking something from them. And it's a cool effect. It
is a cool effect, but it's kind of like wasted. It seems like. I really wish they kind of would have gone with some kind of zombie thing, but whatever.
I mean, in a more expansive movie, they might have had them start showing up in the cars of the bad guys right before they died.
Yes,
that could have been
well said.
But
or you remember Tony in I Married a Monster from Outer Space. Everybody that's been stolen is in like a warehouse somewhere. I mean, it'd be interesting if somehow he's like stealing these people and storing them. I don't know. There are so many. This movie, considering it's not very long, has a million different little plots that kind of don't go anywhere. And like, I feel certain there's got to be a cleaner way to present the mystery of the dead Jamie, the living Charlie Sheen, and by the way, the brother we have not even mentioned.
Well, I mentioned the brother. I mentioned that he's the only one who stands up to the guy, but
it seems like there's a way, like, this could be all reorganized a little bit.
And it's so stupid. Like, that is, to me, the dumbest part, actually, is when, for whatever reason, nobody has introduced that there's any reason why anybody should believe in supernatural stuff, but for whatever reason, Charlie Sheen goes, "You know who I am," and she goes, "Jamie," like her dead boyfriend. I'm like, why? Well, I think, at that point she has seen him convert out of his like motorcycle outfit into regular street clothes, so I guess she knows that there's something weird about him, but she's just like, "It's Jamie." And then the brother when he gives him the car, Charlie Sheen leaves his little brother the car, he goes, Jake, come back, Jamie. And I'm like, why do you think it's Jamie? Like, where on earth could you
Yeah.
possibly have gotten the idea that this was your dead brother?
Well, that's
There
the
is
movie
no setup
reaching.
for that.
They're reaching for an emotional moment that hasn't really had any opportunities to get built up to in this movie. That's
Totally failed.
again kind of crowded with other stuff, like because in a sense, in a way it's plotted like a serial killer movie, right? Like a slasher. Like this
Yeah.
guy is out killing people, but the difficulty is also it's like if the slasher, for prom night or some other film like that, were a reincarnated person that your final girl actually is in love with. And so imagine after he kills everybody, Michael Meyer goes, "You know who I am," and Jamie Lee Curtis goes, "Michael," and
Yeah. My
I mean,
brother.
it makes no sense at all. He's been
Now-
murdering people
Not
for
to
an entire.
mention that initial flashback that they had when they were
Yeah.
on the beach or wherever, and he has the scars on his back. I
Yes.
was so confused because they hadn't really brought up this plot line yet at that point when they had
That's
that
right.
flashback. And I was like, wait, is this how he got those scars on his back? And then you were like, no, this is a different actor. I was like, this is a different actor?
Yeah, because
What's
I
going
was
on?
confused as well. It was a different actor, but yeah, the character dies and he comes back with a different face. I guess because he doesn't want to be recognized. All of this is
Well, he says something like, "This is the best I could do." So
Yeah,
whatever
it's like
deal
the
he
body
made
was
with-
all the body was so messed up. Like I said, at
Oh.
that point I said this is like Oh Heavenly Dog, where Chevy Chase
Yes.
dies, and then they're like, "Oh, yeah, your body got cremated, so we can't send you back as you. You can go back in a few weeks as another guy." He's like, "No, I got to go back right now because I got to catch this person before they kill somebody else or whatever, blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "Well, you can go back as a dog." And he's like, "Okay, I guess if that's the best you can do."
So
wow.
you could
Thank you
still
for
have done
remembering the
something-
plot of Oh Heavenly Dog. by the way.
Yeah, you could still have done something where when he throws Billy the keys, it's the key ring that he had from
Something.
supposedly
Yeah.
his hopped up car.
But even then, he'd be like, "Why do you have my brother's key ring?" He wouldn't be like, "It's my brother." I mean, it's
Well,
just
I have so many questions about that. Okay. After Charlie Sheen, remember, Charlie Sheen has come to this earth as a new body for the dead boyfriend. He has one job, which is kill everybody in that gang. He's
and
done
also
with that
get
now.
back together with his girlfriend and
Yeah,
have
yeah,
a
yeah.
happy life with her.
So he gives his living brother, "Hey, here's my sweet
Ride.
extraterrestrial supernatural
Which-
Dodge Turbo."
Which, by the way, I guarantee you, if in this universe they didn't have the line, but if they did, it would be, "Here's this awesome car. Go get some chicks."
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how that's supposed to work. I guarantee you.
I mean, this is a heck of a gift, right? Because this
Oh, yeah.
car,
Oh, and it got evidently all kinds of crazy superpowers. Also,
yeah, it's
somehow
got like a
manifests
super engine,
evidently it comes with a cool suit and a space shotgun,
Yes,
which
right.
they've used once.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, so is the brother now going to have access? This is a dumb question, but I just feel, does that mean that from now on he's going to be able to drive around all over Arizona with this Dodge and that shotgun and the motorcycle outfit, like the racing outfit? And does this car ever need service? Because it has a weird engine that's like an alien. God makes cars. First of all, let's establish something interesting.
No,
in this
you
movie.
keep
Or the
saying that.
devil.
I don't think it's either one. I think he is in some kind of limbo purgatory place that you go to when you need to come back to Earth to get revenge on your killers,
Okay.
before you get to go on to whatever your final destination is. That's what I think. So I don't think
Okay.
this is God. I think this is
Some
like
supernatural force
purgatory.
made this car, though.
Somebody
That's what
made
I'm
the
saying.
car.
What,
It doesn't
Katerina?
have to be the Judeo-Christian God. I'm just
Yes,
saying.
yes. Yeah, but
that-
what was Katerina saying?
I was just saying that is a good question about what abilities does the car still do the cars
Have
never
on their
mind.
own.
No,
Yeah,
that's-
no. What abilities?
abilities
That, yeah, because he
does the
says
car
he
have?
says to he says to his
does
brother,
it still
"This
have the
car can
magical
do
ability
amazing
to put
things."
itself back together after being totally wrecked?
Right.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
agree.
Will it still have those powers?
Yeah.
Will Charlie Sheen? So meanwhile, he goes, "Okay, take my awesome, supernaturally souped up Dodge Turbo, and I'm
That's
going to
right.
ride off literally into the sunset with my living girlfriend." My question is, does his new Charlie Sheen body age? You know, is he? Is he?
Yeah, now that he's
Or-
done with the revenge thing, does he just have a regular life? He just gets to pick up where he left off.
Or did they disappear into a bunch of bits and go to heaven?
Well, but she's not dead. That would suck if Sherilyn Fenn goes
Well,
off.
I don't know. I mean, is that so that becomes a conundrum. Are
Yes,
they
it does.
going to go live happily ever after on Earth, or does he take her to whatever place is their reward, where she's not traumatized by having her boyfriend killed in front of her and then hidden
Yeah.
and then left in the desert with a blanket, and somehow she's
Though that's a
compartmentalized all
troubling.
that.
That's a troubling lesson too.
I think, Tony, I
No.
think one time you said in another movie that we've given this way more thought than the people who made the movie actually did. I think that's the case here as well.
But it's kind of one that's going to go one of two ways, right? Either they're going to go, it's one of two tropes. They write off and they live happily ever after as well. Hopefully not reality's Charlie Sheen, because that's going to end really badly for her.
He has tiger blood, man. He has.
He's winning.
Like,
He's winning.
He's
I
a
mean, that-
ninja.
If it's true Charlie Sheen, this is going to end badly for her, especially.
Yeah.
But if it's, the cool Wraith Charlie Sheen, maybe it can be happily ever after. Or are we led to believe that it's the other trope of now we can live in paradise where I take you after I split into multiple crazy special effects?
Special
I don't know,
lights.
you know.
So she's gonna go. That would be weird.
It's. I was just having this wonderful thought, like what it would be like if we watched this movie, but all of his lines have just been dubbed with random shit that Charlie Sheen has said. So,
That
so she's
is
like,
a
I
YouTube
was
video
waiting
that
for
needs
you
to
all day,
happen.
and he's like, I have tiger blood. I'm an immortal.
Well, what you could also do is do that whenever he's on screen, but add a lot more quotes just as he's crazy car suit guy.
Yes.
So you don't have to worry about lips moving or anything. You
Exactly.
can just interject a lot of winning era Charlie Sheen quotes whenever he's just doing things. So I'm sure there's a whole chunk of lines you could do when he's shooting up the garage.
I have
Yeah, no
Adonis
kidding.
DNA.
Exactly.
I
As
love
he's
it.
shooting each thing, he can just rattle off some completely insaniac coke-fueled quote.
So okay, what I have
Dear
another question.
readers, we're
I have
giving this idea to you,
Have at it.
your
right?
listeners.
Yes. I have another question. So when he is in the garage, he does not shoot the humans. He just shoots things. But he is no problem killing the humans
Yeah.
when he's in his car. Do you think he's feels detached from it as long as he's
I
using a
think it
car
just
as a weapon and
intimidates
not a whatever that shotgun's called? What's it? It's called a Franchi SPAS 12 shotgun.
Yep. The Spas 12. Yes.
Maybe maybe using the car, maybe using the supernatural car gives him the ability to bring them back as those weird eyeless corpses.
For
Yes.
whatever value that
So
has.
Right.
he just shot them. Oh no! Oh well, they're just normal dead people.
No-
but
no
if he
cool
brings them back,
effect.
he can bring them back and make them look creepy.
Here's
There you
the
go.
real secret.
There
if
you
he
go.
shoots them, they can't film an awesome race scene.
Yes.
So
Well, but then what's the point
The
of the shooting?
music
Is
in
my
this
point.
movie.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have some more Charlie Sheen quotes for you, just because
Okay.
I think our life
All
would
right.
be
For the dear listeners
wasted
that
if
are
we
gonna...
didn't get to. I am on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen. It's not available
Nice.
because if you try it, you will die. Your face will melt off, and your children will weep over your exploded body.
See,
Oh, wow.
these are all
He has to
things
say
that
that.
could be dubbed over
For
this
sure.
garage shooting sequence.
I'm
It would
tired
fit
of pretending like I'm
perfectly.
not special. I'm tired of pretending I'm not bitching. I'm a total freaking rock star from Mars.
That works really well with this movie.
Why are these
Again,
literally
dear
describing the
listeners,
movie?
What, Katarina?
I just said, why are these literally just describing the plot of the movie?
I know. It really
Yeah.
feels like it fits kind of perfect. Maybe
So,
Mars is the afterlife that he went
what
to
we've
get the awesome car.
discovered is the Charlie Sheen of the future has come from the Wraith.
Yes.
Well, a bunch of lights converged and made
Charlie
that
Sheen.
happen. Well, the
He
future
is a
Charlie
rock star
Sheen.
from Mars. He totally
I
is.
got one more. I'm sorry, man, but I've got magic. I've got poetry in my fingertips most of the time, and this includes naps. I'm an F-18, bro, and I
And
will
this
destroy
includes
you
naps.
in
I love that he throws in, don't think that it's not true when I'm napping, because it is true all the time, including
See,
naps.
that's the one you overdub when he's sitting behind the wheel going vroom.
Yeah.
vroom.
Or when he's lying there looking at Sherilyn Fenn in her bikini.
Women are not to be hit; they're to be hugged and caressed.
Oh, okay.
Jeez.
Ah, I love it. I love it, man.
Good
This is
night.
my life is more full now because we got to share in
But
the
is
wit and
it?
wisdom of Charlie Sheen.
But is it?
But is it?
I'm not
really?
look, I'm not here to
Is it
yuck your
really?
yum, but I wonder.
You know,
But I do still think that if I had an infinite amount of time, one of my projects now would be the Wraith with updated Sheen quotes as
Yes.
a video project. This
I
may
totally
still
wanna see that.
happen, but I don't
Has
have a lot
anybody
of
looked to
time
see if it
lately.
actually exists? It might already exist.
it may.
Oftentimes, the
same
things
way-
that we could think of already exist.
In the same way, there's the James Earl Jones quotes over Star Wars, like previous
Yes.
James Earl Jones, which is absolute freaking magic.
Yeah, because you'd
But-
really only need to make it like a 4-minute YouTube video of just moments of the Wraith walking around. That's great.
And Charlie Sheen as
Yes.
Jake. But
Yes.
yeah, so anytime the Wraith or Charlie Sheen, you just cut out those parts and then add
Yeah.
these from the future quotes.
Yes.
It would be perfect. Wow.
So yeah, that actually is the end. I'm trying to I wanted to circle back to something about Gutter Boy, which was the interesting thing that Gutter Boy, to your point, we feel bad for Gutter Boy because in a way he is exactly like Sherilyn Fenn, which is to say that in this movie there are people who are caught in Nick Cassavetes' like gravitational pull and couldn't get out of it even if they could think to, so Sherilyn Fenn in theory is just hanging around with him because he forces her to, but she lives in a universe that will do nothing to help her, and he's very much the same way. You kind of get the impression if Gutter Boy decided, I don't want to be part of this gang anymore, I don't think that they would let him go. I think he's kind of stuck. I feel really sorry for him. I really did. Jamie Bosian is the name of that actor, and he's giving a pretty decent performance inside of this bizarre like post-apocalyptic gang concept.
I like when Clint Howard decides I'm bugging out.
Yes.
He's taking his blueprints and everything. Like he's
His blueprints.
he's the kind of guy I guess couldn't get a job at like GM or any place because he likes the fast life and the drugs, and he likes the prestige because he's a geek. He gets the prestige from hanging out with Nick Cassavetes, who probably throws him a residual bone here and there.
Sure.
But again, he gets to try all these crazy car concepts.
What a neat character. This guy who is super intelligent and is here trapped in this gang because this is him making the best of a sucky world. So it's a
he's a geek that I'm sure, definitely wasn't popular, definitely wants to, get stuff done. He's probably making more money than at a other mechanic shop because they're illegally chopping cars. So he's probably making a decent amount. And again, if you're, it's like the higher ups in Lord Humongous's gang, right?
Yeah.
Like Lord Humongous is going to kind of protect you. He's pretty bad, but as long as you're close to him,
that's right,
things aren't so bad. Which I tell people all the time who really want to tout anarchy and this is how this is like. Well, are you Lord Humongous? Because in a world of Lord Humongous or Nick Cassavetes, if you're not one of those people, you're probably going to be strapped to a car on the back of a bike.
Right. Yeah, you don't fare well in this universe.
Say like, if you're not, that's how that striation always works. If you're not Lord Humongous, you better be. If you're the kind of person who's like anarchy, I just watch the world burn, just show this, like that's the question I always want to ask them. Are you yourself Lord Humongous? Because if not, the world's not going to be kind to you.
Yeah. No, for real.
And I always find that amusing when people who probably aren't that are really adamant about this brave new world they've decided would be cool and
oh my god,
that they could be part of. Because I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah. Anyway,
So
And
that
you know,
takes us.
kind of
Oh, go ahead, Katerina. I'm sorry.
that kind of like dynamic of you have the big bad villain and their minions is like it shows up in every type of media. In fact, when you guys were just talking about that, it made me think of actually the Mean Girls musical.
Yeah.
They have this song called Apex Predator, which is just what Katie sings about, you know, Regina's power over everybody. And it has the quote, you know, and it's kind of fun when she bares her claws when I'm safe because I'm with the Apex Predator. And it talks about her being, quote unquote, in her pride and all that. And it's just kind of like this idea of, you know, if you're not with me, you're against me, and you don't want to be against me. So
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, exactly. I love the moment, by the way, in the film Mean Girls when she walks into the food court, and suddenly it looks like a watering hole, like an oasis, you know, with all the primates sort of splashing around and kind of showing off their colors and doing all these rituals and you know the young ones sort of fighting with one another. It's a brilliant. That was a really clever movie. I think Tina Fey wrote that. Actually, come to think of it.
Yeah.
Mean Girls, yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious, not to put you on the spot, Katerina, but part of what you're going to bring to this podcast is I'm really curious about your extra notes on not having grown up in the 80s and not
Oh yeah.
because you recontextualizing that to the Mean Girls musical is exactly the kind of stuff that I'm fascinated by because it's totally correct. But what are your and it'll lead into final thoughts, but I'm really curious about more of what you think of viewing this from a totally different era, not having grown up for this, and how you thought of this movie and its tropiness, etc. Again, you know, not to put you on the spot, but since we have you on the line,
Yeah.
on air, that's what I think you kind of bring to this episode. So I'm really curious to get
Well-
the voice of the youth.
Yes.
Yes,
do-
as we discussed, Katerina, just like I represent all women, you represent all youth. Go ahead, speak for the youth.
Well, I mean, I am not quite. I don't know if I have like a usual perspective on this either, though, because I do like indulging in older media involving
Sure.
teenagers. Typically not 80s stuff, though, like mostly stuff that comes from before that. But
And that's
that
cool, too.
does mean that I have like this weirder perspective on this movie in particular. Because I remember getting like, we were talking about the misogyny of it all with the how Packard treats. I keep forgetting her name, Carrie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that, I was like, how is this even okay for the villain to do in this? Like, this doesn't feel like it should be okay to be in the movie, just like the way that he was totally treating her as an object.
Yeah.
And again, this weird drag racing theme that keeps popping up. It just like, it was so unrealistic, and it full on. I'm going to compare it to another more modern thing, which is it reminded me of that episode of Riverdale where, like, for some reason they decide that they're going to drag race the ghoulies.
Right.
Which is literally a greaser gang who literally dress like they're from the 80s.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But then, yeah, so they're trying to settle this whole gang, drug lord, whatever, you know, we get this territory if we win, we get this territory if we win, and they're like, oh, let's drag race to settle this.
Yeah.
And they drop everything, and they have all the music, and it's just, you know, this is the plot now. Yeah, and another thing is, like, all of the music that went with this movie.
Yeah.
Oh, now that's peak 80s right there. Ozzy
Yes.
Osbourne, the band Lion, who did the Transformers, the movie, the animated movie from this time period. They did the theme song for that. So there's 2 Lion tracks. There's also, if I remember correctly,
Smoking in the
there's
boys'
Billy,
room.
yeah, there's
is
Billy
here?
Idol, Bonnie
Yeah.
Tyler,
Bonnie Tyler,
Motley Crue, and Stan Bush of You Got the Touch fame, who just can't not do an 80s soundtrack at this time period. You can't not hire Stan Bush, evidently.
So
It's
what about
brighter.
Katerina? So what about the music? What about it?
So it's like they try so hard to make all of these moments seem epic and cool and whatever, or shocking. But I remember like there was one moment where the main guy, or the main villain, I guess, like he unfolds this piece of paper and they have like a sound effect,
Right.
Music
which
cue.
doesn't make any sense because when he unfolded that paper, there's no way that anybody in the audience has gotten the chance to read it when that sound effect triggers. So it just doesn't do much for the tone.
Right.
And like they have a lot of awkward transitions like that throughout the entire thing, where they will just suddenly put in a sound effect or a song that just came out of nowhere because they're like, this is how you're supposed to be feeling right now, by the way. This is
Music
a
cue to
moment.
tell you what to feel. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
You're not wrong. But I will, again, the soundtrack of its time at its time is yet another reason why you may get a bunch of adults who are, yep, that's how the kids are, but you're also going to get a bunch of guys who are going, yes, Ozzy Osbourne, Secret Loser, hell yeah. Stan Bush, I feel that. Motley Crue, fantastic. You know, Live, even though they didn't like get super popular because of these soundtracks, which seems like they should have. All of that is definitely, well, if we can't wow them with this one part, then we're gonna make the soundtrack do that.
I liked 1/4 of the music, and the rest of it was crap, in my opinion. 80s
there-
or not, I was just like, this music is garbage.
Well, there was a lot of the
Not
like
thinking of it as,
very
like-
poppy stuff that is about as generically 80s as you can possibly make.
Yeah, it
And
was just
again,
like music.
go ahead,
basically.
Julia.
No, it's just like rock and roll music. You know, it's just like.
Oh, there's a lot of it. I mean, Secret Loser when they're at the beginning, that Ozzy Osbourne track is really cool, and the Lion stuff was really cool. It's
I
weird
love
that they
I love
started-
Motley Crue. I mean
Bonnie Tyler, I like. Yeah.
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 But
It's
a
a-
lot of
it-
that stuff, it's funny to me again when you go back to this weird it's that weird thing where they're trying to do all this ironic 80s stuff. I still to this day don't understand why, if you're gonna play it for let's laugh at the 80s, which I hate absolutely. But that's the thing that people do, and it's this was so bad, it's good, blah blah blah. Right? Why wouldn't you just have somebody make a Stan Bush song or any of these? Any of the B tracks on this?
Yes.
That are this sing about just the structure and the synths and all of the bits, because now you can get those synths as like a software synth. You just download it. You don't have to buy the 80s synth or whatever.
Well, I can tell you an answer to that,
it's
Tony.
crazy to me that if you're gonna do this, don't be lazy about it.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me to no end.
I mean, the answer is like it really comes down to if you wanted to do a parody of any given thing, like say if you wanted to do if you wanted to do a parody of 1980s detective shows, the parody gets better and better the more the person who is writing it and directing it is familiar, like bone deep with the stuff. If not, what you'll wind up is a very surface parody where they're like, I think this is like a thing they do, right? And so you just kind of wind up with a fake parody, you know, where the director doesn't really know the stuff. And God knows that we've seen a lot of this crap, right? You know, like especially people parodying 80s fashions and stuff like that. And it's like, this would be a lot funnier if you were aware of like how this stuff actually worked.
And all you have to do, and that it just, again, maybe, I don't know, perhaps I've had this rant too many times.
No, I don't think you have.
An 80s Sears catalog.
Yes.
To understand what it looked like. Because that's if stuff like that, where you can, it's pretty simple. A lot of that stuff is online, and that's exactly what middle America would have bought.
Yes.
And I see things all the time that feel just so superficial.
Yeah,
part of it
thank
could
you
be
for saying
budget,
that.
because going to a vintage store can be expensive, but the other is just pure laziness, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's so much that like people who are really into like 80s nostalgia and all that actually care about what the 80s did. I think they just like certain things about how they dressed or whatever, so they like to steal those elements and be like, this is 80s nostalgia.
Right. But it's lazy. That's lazy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you could do a lot better. Like, I was watching a movie the other day, making Julia watch a terrible, terrible film called Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Because
Be
you don't have
careful
to
when you
make me
say
watch that.
terrible, because Rain loves that movie.
oh no,
and
I love the
he
movie
doesn't have to
too.
make me. I like that movie. It's a fun movie.
Okay. Well, I like the movie too, but one of the things that I love the most about that movie is how it's just this side of a super expensive film, and therefore stars like Helen Hunt and everybody are wearing what you have to imagine are just off the rack clothes, right?
Mhm.
Just wearing stuff that you would buy at a department store. And that's so much cooler because that means that you get to see like what people would actually wear if they were like gonna put on something cool to like actually look good. This is what they would wear. This is the best that Macy's could offer
Right.
in 1986. And I love that because it feels a lot in other words, not dressed like people from a music video, which can often be quite strange, but just like people wearing off the rack.
Right.
And that was that's super neat.
And
Yeah.
thank you, Katarina, for speaking for the youth. Not to put you too much on the spot, but while we have you here, I very much appreciate that.
You have
Do you
represented
have any
well.
other observations about the 80s, Katerina, before? Because I would love to like show you like a whole bunch of movies about the 80s,
Yeah.
just to keep
spare the poor child.
just to.
About her film.
There's plenty of good 80s stuff, by the way. Like,
Have
not
you
everything
seen
is the Wraith.
a
but-
The only
Footloose?
good
You're
80s
gonna
stuff.
love Footloose. Honestly.
The only good 80s stuff is John Hughes. No, that's not true. But most of it, most of it's John Hughes.
That's a really solid point. Well, no, we've watched Just One of the Guys, which actually is a super fun movie.
I'm gonna go ahead and stick with my original statement.
That's my statement. I'm sticking to it. I like it.
I've watched so many 80s films that now most of my enjoyment is in like digging deep into like second and third tier movies that are even
I mean,
a little trashier,
second and-
I suppose.
Second and third tier was my VHS renting youth, so I can't.
Yeah. I mean, like Class. Oh my God, have you seen Class? That's the one
Not
where
recently, but yeah.
is it Andrew? Oh, it's Andrew McCarthy and oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the name of the anyway, Andrew McCarthy basically goes to college and he immediately starts dating his roommate's mom, but he
It's not
doesn't
Raquel
know
Welch,
it's
is it?
oh, it's it's killing me that I don't remember. Anyway.
So one thing that's fascinating, though, when you're talking about that, and we should probably get our closing thoughts.
Yeah.
Yes.
But one thing that's interesting is Andrew McCarthy and people like, or Nick Cassavetes in this.
Yes.
What is fascinating about this is the archetype of, even if he wasn't a possessive, horrible, the villain in this is just deplorable, and you can't have him killed soon enough.
Yes.
But in Hughes movies, anytime Andrew McCarthy's on the scene, it seems like, because he made several movies where he was just this guy. But when you see these people, the hair, everything, in this one, he's punk. But in another movie filmed in a more suburban, he would be guy with jacket with shoulder pads.
Yeah, you're totally right.
But the archetype and the look is this thing that when you see that, terrible person right there.
Yes.
Mostly blonde in most cases. But that's always endlessly fascinating to me that we had decided that in this one, come on, he's not
bad guy
Hughes,
yeah.
But teenage, especially teenage to college age bad guys, this is it.
Yeah, well, it's like Better Off Dead. Hey, Jason, it's Jacqueline Bisset.
Yes. With the thing with Class, by the way, it was before all these guys were big hits, but with this one, Andrew McCarthy is Rob Lowe's roommate, and he meets Rob Lowe's mom, and they start having this affair, but Rob Lowe doesn't know. Andrew McCarthy's not the bad guy; he's more just kind of a nebbish. I mean, he's just sort of stumbling his way through this life and sleeping with his friend's mom. It's a fascinating movie. I mean,
but anyway, we can go on and on about 80s movies. We should really wrap it up.
Okay. Katerina, so much 80s for you to discover. I can't wait for you.
I'm sorry if you aren't on board with this. I didn't mean to open the floodgates.
It seems it's a lot of just like fun.
Right.
Because, well, I mean, first of all, the culture itself or I guess the media itself is very fun.
Sure.
But it's just
Yeah, it's
just
not
really
heavy.
interesting.
It's not a
Trust
lot.
me,
There's
there
not a
are
lot of
much
heavy.
better movies than this.
Yeah,
So
there's not a lot of
hopefully-
heavy stuff that.
Hopefully, Jason will show you those.
Mhm.
Yeah, even the
I-
better. Like I have seen, I guess what you guys would consider to be good '80s movies occasionally.
Yeah, but we got
that was
what
not
we
trying
us
to be
guys.
insult
What
or
us
anything.
guys would consider
But,
to be good movies. She's like, I'm not gonna go
just saying-
as far as to say that.
But yeah, they do have this like distinctly fun tone to them that I don't find a lot in stuff nowadays, which is just mostly made for the realism a lot of times, or perceived realism at least.
I think
Yeah.
that's perfect. I think that's pretty awesome that there is. Wow, that's super cool, because I do agree with you that there's a tone that was present. And again, this is a broad stroke statement, right?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
there's a massive amount of movies from the 80s. It's just, you can go
obviously,
all over the
yeah.
place, art films, everything. But I think in genre film, especially, and in the more popular, the things you are most likely to find in a video rental store of the time, because that's how distribution was.
Yeah.
That there is a level of fun and kind of let's throw it all at the wall and see what sticks kind of stuff. And so the fact that you point that out, I that's really super cool, and very astute. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, she keeps talking about how the first rated R movie she watched was Breakfast Club, because we didn't realize it was rated R when we showed it to her. It's like, whoops,
Nice.
sorry.
Even be an R-rated movie though, or like
Yeah.
I don't think it would be if it came out today.
Yeah, I agree.
But
I mean, it'd probably be
Pretty
on
tame.
TV. Like, there's tons of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty
on-
tame.
Yeah,
Mhm.
on Netflix.
I don't even think there's any nudity in that.
No,
It's
it's
rated
just
R
very
for language,
tame.
essentially.
yeah, it's just
Which is
language
funny
and
because
content. They
In
smoke
PG
pot.
movies, yeah.
They smoke pot.
Yeah.
They talk about virginity and loss of it.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about the fact that, like, obviously in ET, there's a level of cursing that would never fly in movies aimed at kids like ET was today.
Mhm.
That's the astonishing. Everything's changed. Everything's been flipped around from how it was in the 80s. You
Yeah.
can't have nudity today the way that you could in the 80s, just sort of accidentally and nobody cared. You can't have casual racism, and thank God, the way that you could in the 80s.
But
You
boy,
know?
can you have violence.
Interesting,
Yeah.
because we talked about this when we were talking the movie, watching the movie as well. The nudity thing has gone down, but for some reason there's a lot more graphic violence today, and that's because you have the resources and budget to do more graphic scenes today.
Yeah.
But I just
Yeah.
find it interesting that there is so much more gore and so
Well-
much less nudity.
Yeah.
And that's flipped around in Europe. Like, the U.S. is
Right.
one of the few places, not the only place.
I am
'cause it
talking
depends.
about American culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in general, most of the world goes, what's wrong with the human body and what's
Yeah.
wrong with sex?
Right.
And
They even have it
shouldn't
in
there
the
be
ads.
something-
Yeah, you walk around Paris and the posters on the subway, the little metro stops have nudity. Like nobody cares, you know.
Yeah, that also is sort of the universe now of like premium shows, which is so funny because then, therefore, if you're on an HBO show, they'll just sort of have a gratuitous nudity that they just throw in, just sort of to make you feel better about the fact that you're subscribing to HBO, and they have those resources. You know, they don't have to worry about people complaining or whatever.
Well,
It is bizarre.
It proves it's a cable show, right?
Right.
Mhm.
That's the difference.
That's
Premium
right. But it can
channel,
be
so.
so dumb. Oh my God. I have no objection to nudity at all, but it is just so absurd how they'll try to sort of shoehorn nudity into Westworld.
Well, and they
Because-
shoehorn, yeah. Oh God, Westworld. Don't get me started on Westworld. Oh my God, that's so much gratuitous nudity. Not even. It's like ridiculous. But no, the other thing is how they shoehorn in people sitting on toilets. Like I'm always like, why do we have to see all these people sitting on toilets? Like, who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's constant now. I'm like, that's
That
never
that reminds me of the Jackie Mason used to make the comedy. He goes, I know everybody does all of this, but they also always have soup, and we don't see people eating soup.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why do we have to see all of it? Exactly.
I got it.
Okay. When people have started talking about Jackie Mason, that it's time to wrap up.
And
Let's
toilets.
I want to get your final thoughts, everybody, on the Wraith, which is in theory what we are discussing. So it was Tony Joya Caterina, and I'll take us out. Well, no, we'll do our endorsements. So, Tony, final thoughts on the Wraith?
Not as good as I possibly remembered it.
No.
Yeah. Problematic for many different reasons as an adult. Still has an awesome soundtrack, and I will go to the grave for that. Not every bit, but enough of the soundtrack is really, really cool. Awesome cars and some really cool car chase footage. Like when they were filming the car races, all the drag racing stuff. It's well filmed. All that's well put together. It is definitely a time capsule of a movie. It's weird in a way that I kind of, watching it as an adult, feel apologetic, which I don't always feel about 80s movies. Sometimes I'm more akin to, well, that was just a time. Just roll with it. But this movie, as I said, as I was watching it, I'm going, oh man, Julia's gotta watch this. This is the most, and I mean, it is one of the most doodly. And now that I know Katarina, I have to watch it too. Like, oh, this is the movie for dudes.
She actually was, she was there voluntarily. Like, we can't make her sit down and watch stuff. But then this one, she was just like,
oh, you're watching a dumb 80s.
This is a very doodly movie. Yeah. This is full of testosterone, and everything about this time period is represented, warts and all. Epitaphs, ideas, all of that clearly on display. I'm not sad that we covered it, but I did have just a different view of it on this particular time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Julia, the Wraith.
Well, I am glad we watched it because I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I've really enjoyed hearing Katarina's perspective on all of this.
Oh, hell yeah.
And were it not for having watched it, we wouldn't have had this. So it had a few moments that I thought were fun, and I really loved the car. I really loved the scenery. But for the most part, I just thought it was really, really dumb, and yes, a couple of things were incredibly offensive. But you know what? Like I say, I've really had fun having the conversation and hearing everybody's perspective.
Wonderful. Katarina, what are your final thoughts?
I think just the biggest thing that this movie left me with was the tonal awkwardness of it all. I still don't really know what it was going for. Like, does it want to be a horror movie? Does it want to be a comedy? Does it want to be a drama? Because there were some, I guess, dramatic moments there with the dead brother and all that. Along with the ever so often, just like there's 2 seconds of nudity right here, and it goes away. But I did have a lot of fun watching it, or else I would not have stayed the whole time.
Yeah, she doesn't usually stay. It really is odd.
No, it was funny. So, and
wonderful.
Yeah, I'm glad I was here for this as well.
Yeah, awesome. Super fun. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, I have very little to add to that other than I kind of enjoyed just wandering around in the world of a small desert town occupied by sadistic drag racing gangs in the 80s. It's
filmed desert town.
It's so nuts, man. This was Tony. Thank you for.
I'm sure that wasn't the nose gold talking.
Yeah.
Or that rot brain gut brain.
What the Sam
that
Hill
you're trying to put in your brain, and this movie's turned it to mush.
It's just so crazy. It's so crazy weird how this movie itself already.
Those could also be warnings. Beware, Katarina. Jason might start trying to use that. You and your highfalutin Riverdale and its brain mush rotten gut nose punching, just sloshing around stuff that you're making things in your head. You and the youth with your mush brain stuff things.
I mean, fortunately, I don't think I'm into enough like mainstream media for that to affect me too much. But
sure.
I'll be looking forward to that conversation if it ever happens.
Jason, there you go. Loomis as parenting. The
The other
Sheriff
character I
Loomis
was
Guide to
thinking of
Parenting and
was Burt
Alienating the
Young.
Youth.
Oh yeah, no,
Sorry.
God, yeah, no, I'm sorry. Burt Young in Blood Beach. He was the one who like just talks like a sort of a third-rate Sam Spade. It is weird how none of the characters here represent anything but a distant shadow of actual human beings, and that's okay. To be honest with you, Tony, thank you so much, because the fact of the matter is, I will watch this stuff and truly execrable crap like Embrace of the Vampire and Zombies of Moratau any day, over whatever endurable stuff is coming through right now.
I think it
Honestly,
had been a good month since you talked about Zombies of Mortal.
I
Oh.
I just really love these things.
Do
I
you?
feel like they bring. I feel like these movies that are not aspiring to as much give us more opportunities to bring more thought to them ourselves. Maybe that's a nutty idea. Maybe that's wrong. But I just kind of feel like there's more to think about in a movie that does no thinking. That's my thought.
Cool.
That's I got tiger DNA, man.
Jeez.
Winning.
I also apologize in advance for letting Jason loose with that. That shows up in you guys' household. I can leave it behind.
I
but
just
that-
can't wait for our dear listeners to create our dubbed
I really,
Charlie
geez,
Sheen movie.
oh,
If it doesn't already exist,
But
somebody
like
may.
like I say, I would not be surprised if it already exists. Yep.
yeah.
Agreed.
All right. I want to go to a Halloween party now dressed as a generic 80s punk. Honestly, I think that's a great idea.
Just put some purple Kool-Aid in a hydraulic fuel container and you're good to go. Or I mean, you just get a normal one. Don't actually put things in.
There's got to be a whole bunch of pudgy 40-somethings dressing up as punks for like nostalgia parties.
What would be awesome is to see a gang of said punks who are from different things. So you get like the punk from Star Trek 4, was it?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I berate you, and like
Yeah.
a double dumbass on them.
Yes.
But just like a bunch of punks, random background punks would be amazing. But like all of the side ones, it's not
Yes.
ones you really recognize until you see a bunch of them, and they're all the detritus from gangs that have been disbanded, basically.
Yes.
As their leaders were killed by wraiths and heroes and such.
Although I gotta say, speaking of great movie punks, I love the sort of gender bent character from Escape from New York who delivers the president's finger and says something like, you deviate from the plan, he dies. I mean, that guy really brought a lot to that role. He was and yeah, somebody's got to be him.
Now I kind of also want like a video game, like Streets of Rage and all those 80s beat 'em ups that had random punks.
Yes.
Basically a gang. The villain is a gang of gangsters who no longer have their bosses.
Yes.
So they just kind of congregate and go, what do we do? We're like third tier punks. I guess we'll try to form our own gang and hope that works.
Well, maybe as you gain more XP, maybe you also collect punks to work for you.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Any of that stuff. But I just think that would be great.
We should
Okay.
we should move on to endorsements.
Now let's get to our endorsements. I totally want to hear what you guys are wanting to talk about and are watching and what have you, because this episode has been deep in like mentioning other media. So I'm dying to know. So Tony, what do you have for us? Like what have you been thinking about?
I'm trying to think. I can't remember if I dropped In the Shadow of the Moon, which is on Netflix, which I saw during Fantastic Fest. Again, dear listeners, I'm going to be dropping lots of Fantastic Fest stuff as it comes out. Dolomite Is My Name is still, I cannot wait for everyone to see that. It is universally liked at Fantastic Fest, is going to make an appearance eventually in theaters. I'm trying to think, something else hit theaters. I haven't seen it, but I still need to see In the Tall Grass. But one of the big things is Drew and I, if you're an Austin fan, will be at a Halloween podcast party on October 25th at the Nomad Bar. And some of the podcasters that we know will be there will be one of us, Double Toasted Women in Caskets will be there. Rage
Cool.
Select, of course, Castle of Horror, Junk Food Cinema, Horror Queers, Threequel Club, The Night Out. Chris Cox, who is a podcast kind of aggregator, does a lot of cool stuff.
That is so
Was
cool.
putting this together, so there's like, and there'll be skits or panels that each podcast group will do, and there's karaoke. Again, that'll be October 25th at the Nomad Bar. We'll say more about it. We'll post on the page.
Man, I
but,
wish I could go. I love karaoke.
yeah, I think it's as far as I know right now, Drew and I will be doing comic book monsters
Nice.
and survey there. But there's a lot of cool people involved, and it's just a really cool thing that Chris is putting together. I'm pretty stoked to be hanging with Drew and doing this panel.
Very cool.
Just kind of came up recently, and we want to make sure that we mention it. If you're in Austin, or if you know somebody who's in Austin who likes the podcast or likes, it was cool that Women in Caskets showed up last week, so we kind of have a tie to that. So that's going to be I'm really stoked to be part of that. It's perfectly Halloween time, so getting to meet a lot of our Austin contemporaries, our peers, and hang out along with people who just dig what everyone does. It's going to be pretty cool.
Awesome.
That sounds wonderful. That's great. Thank you. Julia, what about you?
Well, I'm gonna geek out a little bit. This has nothing to do with horror movies, but so I first became a licensed attorney in Texas, and we had to study, and I'm sure they still have to study, maybe, I don't know, oil and gas law. And I found it so boring and so just like not anything I was interested in. And I couldn't imagine ever finding it interesting. And then Rachel Maddow comes along and creates a book that actually makes it interesting. I was like, what? How can somebody make oil and gas interesting? But she's like this amazing storyteller. So her book, Blowout: Corrupted Democracy, Rogue State Russia, and the Richest, Most Destructive Industry on Earth, is basically like a James Michener, just kind of walk through the history of how our world has become just sort of beholden to the oil and gas industry. And I learned stuff about Colorado history. I learned stuff about Texas history. Like I learned just all this really, and I haven't finished it, but I've just been really enjoying it. So, if you just want to kind of see how the heck we got where we are now, this is a great little journey on this book.
That's really wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I've heard you listening to it as well.
Yeah, I have the physical book and the audio book, so I can go back and forth. Yep.
Katerina, do you have anything that you'd like to endorse that you've been listening to or watching or whatever?
Reading.
Yeah, I don't really know.
How was the My Little Pony series finale?
No. Yeah, I get most of the stuff that I am like into / am exposed to from you guys. So yeah.
Really?
I don't know if I should be proud or sorry.
I mean,
if there is something I'm sorry, I will go ahead
really
and cop to that.
That's pretty
okay.
funny. So nothing in particular that you're just been like.
There's got to be
really
something
cool.
you've really been digging though, right?
You've been reading Of Mice and Men. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's what I just said. I said that we just finished a unit on Of Mice and Men in class, and now we're starting the Odyssey, so that's going to be a much longer, much more excruciating experience. But I mean, it is good. We had to talk a lot about like the psychology of John Steinbeck and his writing style and all that. So, I mean, apparently there is a lot more to the book than meets the eye if you read it a second or third or 56th time, as my English teacher has.
Mm-hmm.
So, Katerina, one of my favorite retellings of the Odyssey, and it is much simplified. You may be older than it's supposed to be, but Sally Benson did a book called Stories of Gods and Heroes, and I checked it out a kabillion times when I was younger. Wow, it's from the 40s. Holy cow. Anyway, I just looked it up. But Sally Benson's Stories of Gods and Heroes, I really like how she told the story of the Odyssey. So if you're able to check that out while you're reading the much more, the actual real deal, I do recommend it. So.
Okay.
I just want to mention that since Randy Quaid was in this, that it's really worth looking at Randy Quaid's performance as Lennie when he did Of Mice and Men, because he played it across from Robert Blake, who had been in Cold Blood, and is just was an incredible actor. I mean, a questionable. Best not to discuss Robert Blake's complicated personal life and his acquittal for the murder of his spouse. But he's an amazing actor, and he and Randy Quaid were really good as Lennie and George in A Mice and Men. So I know that you're supposed to actually go seek out movie adaptations, and everybody will recommend the Burgess Meredith version, but I think it's totally worth checking out the Robert Blake and Randy Quaid version, if you can find it. So good luck with that. But the all right, my endorsement, a couple things. It's Halloween time, so everybody must at least once give 15 or less minutes of their lives to listening to the Halloween Horror record album from 1977 that I grew up with, that Michael Bell plays this guy driving out to a southern mansion that he has inherited, and he walks in and it is super scary. And it was a record album. It was like a radio drama where and it's just freaky scary. The hair will stand up on the back of your neck, and it's just kind of neat to experience a sort of a radio drama of that period. It was called Halloween Horror, and I'll put a link on the page. And also Psychology in Seattle. If you listen to that podcast, it's a podcast that is hosted by a therapist in Seattle, and and his guest host is also a therapist. And this week they are talking about the psychology of Joker. But that's like what they do. Like, they watch shows and then they try to diagnose the people in it. I don't know what their diagnosis of the Joker is gonna be, but I can't wait to actually hear what they actually hit the Joker with. So that's really cool. And cool. Yeah, go ahead.
By the way, I do have to mention, and I should have added this, but
No.
Shout out and kind of sad about the passing of Robert Forster.
Oh gosh,
And
yes.
I found out just as I was watching the El Camino Breaking Bad, which I thought was a really great epilogue. I didn't know we needed it, but I think it's a pretty fantastic epilogue to a series that I really enjoyed. But I've been also tracking a lot of people's stories of Robert Forster. Not only is he just awesome in every role that I've seen him in, evidently he was just a really great guy. And being in the film community, or tangentially to the film community, I've had a lot of friends telling different Robert Forster stories, and man, what a just solid dude all the way around.
Yeah.
You've done your career right when people see you come on screen and go, hell yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And that's him all the time. When you see him come on screen, when he shows up in Jackie Brown, you're like, yes,
I agree
quality.
completely.
And just throughout his career, you watch a movie, he comes on screen, instantly the movie's X amount better just for his presence. And
he really did have a presence, didn't he?
in El Camino is fantastic as well, But he's definitely an actor that we didn't get enough of. He's one of the greats, and I'm glad that he enriched our lives with his performances, but also sad that there won't be anymore.
Yeah.
What a just colossal actor, and evidently person as well. The world's a little dimmer without him on screen.
I never had the chance to meet him, but by gum, there sure are a lot of people who had such extraordinarily fond things to say about Robert Forster. So yeah, it is a profound loss. But we certainly, my God, I mean, he's so good in Jackie Brown. Jeez, he's so good. Well, and that brings us to the end. Next time around in the endorsement section, I want to spend a little time talking about some crazy industrial films I've been watching. This could just be a preview from that.
That sounds
so we'll have a good time. So Katerina, thank you for subbing in. It was really interesting hearing your perspective, and maybe we'll drag you back for yet another weird nostalgia fest sometime soon. And thank you, everybody. And come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if you disagree about something, or if you feel we missed something super important about the Wraith. And it means so much to you, your suggestions and comments and everything. So Bring your friends. Let them know. Happy Halloween. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. I think we're taking next weekend off, but we'll be back soon enough. So everyone be excellent to one another. Bye.
Night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.